these two clips. They're both disturbing in their own way. Here is a woman who describes voting for Bernie. This is a Vice roundtable. A woman who describes voting for Bernie in the primary, and then listen to how she voted in the general. And the looks on the faces of the women around her are pretty stunning.
Here, but by a show of hands, who here voted for Trump?
I don't publicize my votes, actually.
So does anyone have questions for the women here that voted for Trump?
Why?
Okay, the reason why I voted for Trump is because I actually was a fellow for the Democratic Party. And so I just really did not like Hillary Clinton. You know, I actually also did a lot of community work for Bernie Sanders as well. And I don't know, I literally sat in the voting booth for like, it was a long time. And I don't know, I just like checked the box. Honestly, I honestly didn't even think he was gonna win. So part of it was a kind of a joke. But again, I don't know, but will I vote for him?
I want to speak to the privilege that holds for that election to be a joke for you, right?
Well, like, it wasn't really a joke. I was like, you know,
just said it.
Well, let me recant what I meant by a joke. You know, I didn't like either party. You know, I think it was like if Bernie Sanders was on the ticket, I would have voted for Bernie Sanders because I really did at the time really love what he stood for, because, you know, he really did a lot of grassroots, and I related to him as a Jewish American, and I thought that socialism was the answer. And then, you know, but then what happened with Hillary Clinton when she stole the election from him, you know, I just couldn't vote for her just because she was a woman. So I did vote for Trump.
Why not write in?
Because that's wasting a vote.
But it was a joke.
But it was a joke vote, so.
Right,
okay.
I mean, let me just start with saying, like, kudos for her for having the courage to say that.
I guess.
But the thing that really disturbs me out of all of that, and to be clear, that the percentage of people who voted for Bernie and then ultimately voted for Trump was lower than at least it was in the last comparable election. But with that said, Bernie never made the claim that Hillary Clinton stole the primary from him. So I don't know where that comes from, but I do know where that comes from. And, you know, when people ask me, like, what was problematic with people like that? First of all, completely untrue. Completely untrue. Is it the case that the DNC, as an organization that had very little influence on the outcome of the election, favored Clinton over Bernie? Without a doubt. Were the debates set up in a way that the DNC thought it would help Hillary Clinton by putting him on the weekends? Absolutely. Did it turn out to help Hillary Clinton? I don't think so. But regardless, that's it. They had no ability to influence anything else. There was no stolen election. That's just the fact.
The system is rigged, but not
the system is
the
not.
election was not literally
but
rigged.
not rigged. Like that is not true either.
Well, certainly when you have to sign up a year beforehand to vote in a primary, that is in favor of establishment candidates, don't you think?
That may be in favor of establishment candidates. It may be not. I mean, it's maybe in favor of people who just, I mean, the idea that a political party is going to require, like, look, I think yes, but the rules were the rules. I mean, you could say rigged does not mean that. You could say that there are structural forces that make it easier for longtime Democrats, if you appeal to longtime Democrats, that you will get elected. But that's not the same as being rigged. It wasn't rigged prior to 1970 when there were no primaries, where It was just picked at the convention.
I would argue that it was.
Okay. Well, I mean, then if you have an
I guess it's
extremely loose,
semantics.
yes, except for semantics means something, because when that woman hears the word, the election is stolen from Bernie Sanders, that makes her go in and say, F it. I'm going to spend a lot of time in this ballot box and I'm going to F it. And so it makes a big difference because rigged has a definition. And it's not, there's a structural advantage for candidates that appeal to members of the Democratic Party. That's true. That's true. That doesn't mean it's rigged in favor of Hillary Clinton. That's not true. That means
Slanted, perhaps.
not front. And Hillary Clinton, if there was another Democrat, if there was another longtime Democratic candidate in there, but it's not slanted, and there is a structural advantage to people who have been longtime members of the Democratic Party. Now, is that going to hurt Bernie this time around? I don't think so. Do you think it's going to hurt him as much as it did the first time around?
Certainly not as much as it did the first time around.
Why?
Because he's more popular now.
And because he's running earlier and people now have the opportunity.
He's running to win. But I do think there are plenty of people who will intend to vote for Bernie and then realize when they show up to vote, oops, I didn't register as a Democrat a long enough time ago.
Yes, and the Bernie Sanders campaign better be out there trying to reach those people and let them know what the rules are and they get in. I agree. It should be much easier to vote for people in primaries. I would like to see same-day registration in all of these primaries. But that's a different critique than saying the election was stolen or that there was some force that was rigging the election in a way that Bernie wouldn't win because nobody contemplated Bernie running. I can assure you, Bernie figured out that he could win probably around the same time that other people figured out that he could win, and it was late in the game for any of it. And so there was nobody who was contemplating. But yes, does a political party set themselves up in such a way that they will favor their partisans? Of course. I mean, I happen to think that we should have same-day registration on primaries as well as general election, but it's sort of hard to make the argument that there was some nefarious plan other than longtime structural bias towards having people who are declared members of your party vote in the primary.
Yeah, well, some people would call that rigged, not in the literal sense, like stuffing ballot boxes. Some people would call it a structural advantage, and they have an issue with that, which they have every right to. But we go back to that woman for a second, because it reminds me of the Onion article. Ironic porn purchase leads to unironic ejaculation.
Right.
It's kind of like that.
It's pretty stunning. I got to say, it's pretty stunning. I would really like to hear from the woman in purple sitting next to her who doesn't publicize her vote.
I want to sit on this panel, but I don't want to talk about my political action.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be on TV, but and then to be fair, here is an example of, I think, someone who's probably more of an outlier, maybe not, but I think, yes, statistically speaking, more of an outlier. Another woman on the panel. They're all young women, seems to me. I mean, maybe everybody's young to me, but young African-American woman who had this to say as to her vote for Donald Trump.
Well, me, I support Trump simply because he's a businessman, and I come from a business family. I was raised, my dad was a single dad. He owned his own business. So, who wouldn't want to vote for Trump? He's a businessman. He's a whole billionaire.
It was handed to him
He's
by
an
his
entire
father.
billionaire. Just because his dad gave him $1 million afterwards, what does that mean? You have to keep up with that. How you build from that 1 million?
I personally feel like
he got that 1 million. He went all the way into debt, almost into $1 billion debt. Came up out of that, and have been successful ever since. And I mean, and me, I'm not a person that just sit there and watches one news channel. I go out and I go to the Women's March. I go and I talk to everybody. I see both sides. I'm not a one-sided person. I would never be that, because once you're a one-sided person, then they can easily eat you alive.
Well, I guess it's nice that a small percentage of black people has enough money that they don't have to care about this stuff.
I mean,
and we can vote their class interests.
I think there are. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what her. I don't know that she's necessarily has money. I mean, her dad's a small businessman. That could mean any number of things, but the idea that certainly been ingrained in certain segments of our society that the accumulation of money has attributes that are associated with it in our society that aren't necessarily the case, right? I mean, Donald Trump has a lot of money. Even if he was to have earned that money himself, which I think it's very hard to say based upon how much money he was left by his dad and how much money he was given by his dad and how much of his business deals were co-signed, literally guaranteed by his dad. Just this idea that is out there. I mean, look, the Republican Party had been cultivating this for a long time. George Bush was the CEO president. Romney. I mean, this is an attitude that is out there that somehow that business is running a business is in some way analogous or an indication of how you will be in the context of public service is. I think we've seen that, when you run a business, you're a businessman, you get in there and you still see it as a business. He's still running it like a business, but for him, for his benefit.